It just feels like once you hit the courts, they want to dissolve absolutely everything. They want you to spend fortunes, and at the end of the day, neither of you really end up better off or well off, which then has a huge impact on mental health. It has a huge impact on your ability to work or go back to the work that you were doing before, because that fight, your children, that fight through court is so damaging, emotionally damaging, that you come out a different person. And it's incredibly hard to re-establish yourself. I don't think that cutting ties is always the answer. It's the answer for the courts. It's not actually the answer for the family. And it's not in the best interest of the children. At the end of the day, if you're not taking care of each other and you're not making sure that one another are going to be okay long term, the moment one of you is not okay or doesn't get to see the children or is alienated, that just completely fractures and breaks children. And then they've got to grow up with all of that. I don't believe that the courts have children at the centre and at the heart of the issues.
So, from your perspective, what do you believe in terms of basic financial management? What needs to be in place before a separation? Even if it's going to be amicable? What
you need to have in place, and one of the things, many things I wish I'd known beforehand, but one was certainly making sure that you're both on a bank account, so you can't take money out of a bank account with both your signatures or both approvals. The other thing is just having like a slush fund, just putting some money aside. And I think for equally, just having $10,000 aside each in your own bank accounts with your own names. You just don't know where things go. I mean, this process can push you to the edge. Just having your own money each side to allow you to make those decisions and take care of your well-being, I think is really important.
What does it take to be a financially empowered woman? And what can financially empowered women do together to change the world? A shocking statistic is that around 400,000 women in Australia are at risk of homelessness, and the cause of this is the lack of education about how to build a financial foundation, starting even before we first enter the workforce and well into our retirement years. My name's Dion Payne, and I'm the founder of the Financially Empowered Women podcast. I'm passionate about ending homelessness, and as part of that passion, I chose to look at the systemic barriers that are causing homelessness for women in the first place. The Financially Empowered Women podcast is designed to bring you the best experts from around the world to increase your financial know-how and give you practical and women-specific tips to overcome the challenges you might be facing, such as how to negotiate a better salary, demystifying super, or how to navigate a separation and ensure the assets are distributed fairly. My role is to provide you with the best information out there to change your trajectory and become a financially empowered woman, because you deserve it, and the world needs you more than ever to own your worth and help others to do the same.
Hi everyone, and welcome to the Financially Empowered Women podcast. My name's Dion Payne, I'm your host, and today I'm joined by Louise Agnew. Let me tell you a little bit about Louise. Louise has been a financial planner for over 18 years. With her ex, she built a business which included SMSF and property strategies. Louise wrote a book to give women confidence with their finances and some basics before they see a financial advisor. Now, Louise has a really interesting story navigating divorce and separation and what that means for your finances. So I'm really delighted to have you here, Louise.
Thanks.
Pleasure. Now, Louise, we're going to be diving into some topics, particularly around the impact of divorce on women's finances. And I know this is something that you've experienced firsthand. Would you be willing to share your story and what happened to you?
Yeah, I think in hindsight, I can probably share the main bits. Obviously, when you're going through that situation, it's not pleasant at all. And so anybody that is going through that situation, I completely sympathise with the process. I don't believe the system is set up very well to help people navigate, especially on the mental health side of it. There's a lot of factors that I just feel like there's a lot of areas where people really need some hand holding on the emotional side, not just, running through the process with lawyers. So for the most part, I'd really love to inspire and help a lot of women through that process and navigate it from a point of, understanding where they sit in making the choices that they do. So obviously, when you decide to leave a relationship, one of the things that we decided to do was to actually leave the home that we were in and sell that and purchase a new home together, even though we had separated at that point. And the idea behind that was to purchase something on acreage that was going to be big enough for us to build on and potentially, build other dwellings on. So have the family unit or a community later on in life for our children. And the idea also was that I really didn't want the children moving house to house and having to go to and from. I went to boarding school as a young girl, and that was week on, week off. I mean, it was week and week, weekends free. So I didn't really want that for my children. I understood how unsettling that was. So getting onto trying to maintain a stable relationship and trying to find a new property and navigate the right sort of contract and go, tenants in common as opposed to joint tenants, and work out how we were going to live on this property and actually separate it so that we each individually had our own lives, but the boys could maintain their own bedrooms, and then just, whoever was on, we were doing sort of night on, night off, depending on our schedules. And the boys were then able to sort of share us all on the same property. So I found that worked incredibly well, and I really enjoyed that kind of transition from deciding to separate. Through that 2 years, we also had a couple of businesses, so we worked quite hard in our businesses post-separation as well. But unfortunately for us, we had a rather big flood that came through Queensland, and we lost our home to the flood. And then we were put back into housing through insurance, back together, like living together. And so after 2 years of really having quite a separate life and getting on individually, we then had to navigate coming back together and still, manage being a family again. It was really, really weird, uncomfortable. And obviously we were both quite different people by that stage. I'd done quite a bit of healing work. I'd been on lots of retreats, and I'd actually worked out what it was that I was going for in my future. And financially, that became quite rocky as well. So yeah, I think that's kind of where everything started to actually crack. A lot of people said they didn't think that the living together on the big property was going to work long term. But for those 2 years, until one of us repartnered, it actually did feel like it was a really good option for a good 5 years. And it was certainly the best option for our children. But ever since that sort of changed and the cracks really appeared, and then we started the court process, then it just felt like all the wheels started falling off. And then that happened quite rapidly, and that's when the downward spiral really started. So for me, it wasn't so much deciding the separation, it was the post-divorce stuff that then appeared, which actually became more problematic than we ever had in our marriage or those 2 years post. It was really once we hit court and, lawyered up, I guess, so to speak, is when things really, really went quite badly for us.
Wow. I think that is that's really quite powerful, because what I'm hearing you say is that in that 2 years, I'm sure it wasn't easy and there were things that you had to navigate, but you were working together and you were acting in the best interest of the boys. Then disaster happened, and yes, I remember the floods that happened in Queensland happened in northern New South Wales as well, and that was its own very traumatic effect. So that it makes sense that there's a re-evaluation of, well, how can we do this? But then the instant that you went to the lawyers, that was when it all was in a very different ballgame.
Yeah, I think also we were in a situation where, had we have really sat down round table, with or without lawyers, and really worked out at that stage how we could have split assets. I mean, I had made a few proposals around, him taking one business, me taking a different business, um, perhaps selling the main home, and then having some money for us to fall back on. But it just got to a stage where lawyers had convinced him to really sell all assets, regardless, even businesses. I mean, it just made no sense to me because each business came with a property, because it was management rights. So we could easily have had a business and a property to live in. And yes, the boys would have had to move between them. But the lawyers were just, whether he agreed with them or not, it was something I just didn't understand, why you would sell up to virtually end up with not a whole lot at the end of it after lawyers had been paid out. I mean, it was just a pretty ridiculous situation, when really both of us could have been in pretty good financial situations coming out of it. And this is what I say to a lot of people: rather get financial advice up front before you start to see lawyers. And that's not to take away from lawyers, but it's to try and understand your financial situation and how you can actually structure it so one of you could take the self-managed super fund and build, properties within that, and the other one can take the investment property. There are ways to work this out and to change titles and that sort of thing. But it just feels like once you hit the courts, they want to dissolve absolutely everything. They want you to spend fortunes, and at the end of the day, neither of you really end up better off or well off, which then has a huge impact on mental health. It has a huge impact on Centrelink. It has a huge impact on your ability to work, or, go back to the work that you were doing before, because that fight, your children, that fight through court is so damaging, emotionally damaging, that you come out a different person, and it's incredibly hard to reestablish yourself. I mean, you basically have to reinvent yourself, find new careers, find different things that fill you up. And from a financial standpoint, you sometimes have to rely on Centrelink to get through, and sometimes they're not even able to provide you with what you need during some of those harder times. So I just think getting the right financial structure set up first, and then getting a document to explain to lawyers who don't always understand structures and the way things have been set up. I know certainly there were many mistakes made, whether it was misconduct or mistakes, I don't know, but I know that there was a lot of a misunderstanding or lack of understanding of how we were structured and how things actually could have worked out much better and in our favor, and certainly have made things a lot better for our children.
Yeah, there's a few things that I'd like to pull out of that. The first is, when I think of lawyers, I think of they like to think and operate in absolutes, so the black and white. So human relationships are not black and white; they're not clear cut. So I can understand why a lawyer would say, "Well, no, just split everything because then you don't have to deal with the messy human stuff," which is, obviously has consequences when that is the primary route of action. The other thing that I want to acknowledge that you said, and I can't believe I haven't thought about this myself, I can't believe nobody has ever said this to me, is going to a financial advisor and understanding, so how things have been set up. And what I see is that going to a financial advisor and getting in black and white, well, if you separate, or so if you go through the courts, then this could be the scenario, but if you can manage to work it out, then this could be the scenario, and showing that I think it's more likely to be a better financial result going through the financial advisor first, and then Armed with that information, then it makes sense to go to a lawyer if you choose to, or try and navigate it yourself. And there are some really good family lawyers out there that do have a more round table, a collaborative approach, but not every lawyer is like that, I know.
Yeah, no, I definitely have met those collaborative lawyers since. And so when I do speak to clients, I tend to use those lawyers instead and come in as the financial person that'll sit in the room and round table and say, well, actually, why would you sell that when, the self-managed super fund could buy that property that the company is in? Why wouldn't you acquire that property there, work in the business, and then she gets a percentage of that business while she then builds XYZ wealth over here? It's just, I know that there is that thing where you can cut ties, but I don't think that cutting ties is always the answer. It's the answer for the courts. It's not actually the answer for the family, and it's not in the best interest of the children. And the other part I want to say about this is that you can actually go on with other partners down the line and in the future when you have set up a proper intergenerational wealth system. So, if we had kept the assets that we had, they're worth an absolute fortune now. We could have actually just transferred them all into trusts, had them very, very plainly locked up, and made sure that all of that would be going to the children at a later stage, and their children, and generation beyond generation. And this is what I think a lot of people need to think of. Okay, well, we were the primary parents. These are our children. It's not just about our retirement, it's about them. And at the end of the day, if you're not taking care of each other and you're not making sure that one another are going to be okay long term, the moment one of you is not okay or doesn't get to see the children or is alienated, that just completely fractures and breaks children. And then they've got to grow up with all of that. I mean, it is not okay. And I don't believe that the courts have children at the center and at the heart of the issues. I believe that if they had, many of the decisions that were made for us would not have been made the way they were. So I just think that, when it comes to being child-centric, if you can stay out of the court and manage it in a different way. Look, mediation I think is worthwhile, but I think it's more worthwhile in a round table. I mean, obviously, if there's major abuse and you can't even be in the same room and all that sort of stuff, that becomes difficult. But I think that there are better solutions than going down the tough one.
If you've been watching the news lately, it's easy to feel a sense of despair. Between power-hungry global leaders and absolute chaos and division, it can feel like things are spiraling out of control. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and just to have a sense of powerlessness. But there is a way to push back. We can stop looking at what they are doing and start looking at what we can do. At Women for Homes, we firmly believe that where we put our money is making a choice for the kind of world that we want to live in. Our mission is powerful: to mobilise 1 million women to invest $5,000 to end homelessness by 2030, whilst being financially empowered along the way. It's practical, it's tangible, it's something that we can do now, and it's something that we can do to take our power back. Join us at www.womenforhomes.com. That's women4homes.com. Yeah, absolutely. And I loved what you said there about keeping it child-centric. I do remember a lady, a lawyer, and that was her sort of tagline. Just basically, if you keep the children at the center of all of your decisions, you will have a much better outcome, whether it be for your family, whether it be financially, whether it be for yourself emotionally as well. It just makes so much sense, rather than focusing on the hurt. Definitely focusing on the children and how you can rise above the hurt for the children. Now, again, as you said, if we're talking about a domestic violence situation, then by all means just get out as quickly as you can. But for sure, in those cases where that where you can have that little bit of space to just go, well, what do I want, and how do I want my life to be, and how do I want my children's life to be, putting them first and foremost in these cases does have better outcomes.
There are yeah, there's so many TikToks and memes out there saying, if the mother of your children is not okay, or is, looking at homelessness, or is not financially well taken care of, or is having to work crazy hours, or having to work 2 or 3 jobs, that affects the children. The children see all of that. They see the one that is struggling the most, and it doesn't matter how much of a victim you can pretend to be. The children see right through it, and I think that, it's important to make sure that everyone is going to be okay in the situation. Everybody comes out okay. That is human decency. That is the right thing to do. But, ego, vengeance, all of that stuff plays into it. And I just wish that sometimes with those roundtable conversations, you actually have a counsellor in there as well saying, okay, but are you talking from your ego on that particular point? We're keeping the children at the center here. Is that just an attack on her, or is that just an attack on him? Does that really help the children here? I feel like you need that person thrown into the mediation mix as well. That would kind of be a lovely outcome, but I think a lot of people are not emotionally developed enough at that point to be able to navigate their own sort of emotional regulation through all of that. But at the same time, I feel like if those were the conversations you were having, and you were doing more of a conscious uncoupling and what is in the best interest of the children, and making sure that each party can survive long term, that's critical. We had enough money that both of us would have been absolutely fine long term, but that was not the outcome.
So from your perspective, what do you believe in terms of basic financial management? What needs to be in place before a separation, even if it's going to be amicable?
Oh, look, I think for each party, if it's going to be amicable, good luck, because even the most amicable people I've spoken to have turned at some point. And I would say 18 months seems to be that mark. You can only go for so long until someone doesn't respond to correspondence, and then it starts to get to you, So 18 months, even the most amicable people that I've found have all got to that stage of like, I've just had enough now, I'm putting my foot down, or I'm just not getting the answers, or I'm in limbo and I can't keep going. So what you need to have in place, and one of the things, many things I wish I'd known beforehand, but one was certainly making sure that you're both on a bank account. So you can't take money out of a bank account with both your signatures or both approvals. Okay, so that will help you with money not getting taken out of the account, because of course, while it's still in joint names, both of you can access that and take as much as you like. So when money suddenly disappears that was put there for the mortgage, and it's gone, you have no recourse. Yeah. So that makes life very difficult. The other thing is just having like a slush fund, just putting some money aside. And I think for equally, just having $10,000 aside each in your own bank accounts with your own names. You just don't know where things go. This process can push you to the edge. You get to a stage where you just want to run away and you just want to go live somewhere else, or you just need a flight overseas to see some family if your family are from overseas, or you just need that escape or that couple weekends away, or whatever it is to get you through, or you need, some heavy psychology and some therapy. Just having your own money each side to allow you to make those decisions and take care of your well-being, I think is really important. And then I would say, really working out your superannuation. A lot of women are far behind on superannuation. Having those discussions up front, knowing where the superannuation is, being transparent about your finances, and really discussing the long-term view of what will happen with your children and their schooling and university. And, I feel like the courts only create an order for what is present and happening now. There is no foresight in those orders. And the reason for that is because they want you to come back when the children are 14 to 16 making different decisions in their life, or wanting to live with a different parent, or wanting to stop school at year 10 or 11, whatever that age is, and none of that is in the orders. And suddenly you've got to now try and get along and renegotiate and work out what's best for the kids. And you've moved to different relationships and you've got different aspirations, and you're sort of thinking your children are going to go in this direction, the next minute they go in a different direction, and now you've got to try and get along with your ex to negotiate those things again. I mean, there's just no foresight in order documents at all. And I think that would be really good to find someone who is going to future-proof the documentation, because you spend such a fortune on all the documentation, but they just don't write enough into the documentation on what this needs to look like going forward.
So it's almost like there needs to be like a questionnaire or something, and so you each have the ability to say, well, in 5 years' time, when our kids are 14, 16, where do we want them to be? Where do we want them to go to school? And so, just thinking about that, thinking about that future, even if it doesn't happen, at least you've started to think about it, and it doesn't come out of the blue. And when you get to that stage and you think, I didn't know that he wanted them to be over there.
Yeah. There's so many examples. Another perfect example is like on the Gold Coast, the rents have almost doubled. Well, what if in 5 years' time the rents have doubled and, you didn't end up with much money, so you're having to rent and you no longer can afford to live on the Gold Coast? What are the options then? Do you take the children out of school? Do one of you move to Toowoomba or, northern Queensland? And then how do you navigate it? The thing between kids, and then you've got to go back to court and you've got to work all that out. Putting that future-proofing in there about what if the market suddenly takes off, or what if you lose your job, or, putting some kind of options around these things. I mean, there's so much to discuss when you leave. You just think, I just need to get out of this marriage, and once I'm out, I'm okay. And I know what I'm going to be doing. Well, you just don't, because economics and everything play a factor in all of it. And like I say, the children change their minds about what they want to do as well. So having all of that in parenting orders would be just amazing. So I have created like a relationship contract where up front, before you even get married, you go through questionnaires on health and well-being and what the future look like and what ifs and all that sort of stuff, and finances and keeping finances separate and what do you put together. And so we're working on something like that, just so that you've got, I think with the divorce rates the way they are, you really have to get into a relationship a lot more sensibly these days, and having worked out a really good questionnaire that then becomes your relationship contract, that then you can set up a prenup or something based on the back of it, is quite an essential tool going forward. It will alleviate a lot of the heartache and stress that people actually go through.
I can see that. And I can also see that as relationships change and people change, then updating something like this would be very valuable. I think of my own relationship. I'm celebrating 20 years with my husband this year. Thank you. And we, from the people that we were when we got married, we've definitely both changed, and we've never done anything formal in terms of, what's the next 5 years going to be like? But I can see that, we just need to be thinking about, this is what our expectations are at this stage, but then revisiting it and coming together and having that shared vision again. And even if you are separated, and you might be talking about the individual vision for your lives, but there is still a shared vision, because it's what do you want for your kids. So again, bringing your kids back to the center of everything.
Yeah, and just on that, I was going to say that's why you have a financial advisor, because every year we get you in the room and we talk about your financial well-being, what milestones we've put in place, what goals we've hit. Okay, what was the next milestone that we're going for? Where are you at? But the conversation always ends up more of a emotional, psychological, and you can generally tell the couples that really stay together and are both on board with their vision and the vision you've created in a financial plan. Even though it's a financial one, the emotional and the psychological and the well-being of your family always play a part. And I think as an advisor, you get so invested into your clients and who they are and their family and their children and all of it, that actually that's when you do talk about these things. Is every year when you have to have that annual review, you have to be accountable to each other as to, okay, what's the next step? What did we not do so well last year as a couple? Or I spent way too much money on travel. Oh, okay, I'll pull that back and not travel with my girlfriends as much because, you didn't get to do X, Y, Z. So I think that's when those discussions sort of keep people on track a lot more. And that's when it becomes really valuable. So, yeah, you don't end up in relationship counselling.
And it reminds me as well. So I had Julian Newbold on as a guest right at the start of the first season of the Financially Empowered Women podcast, and she shared that there's definitely a higher proportion of relationships that stay together in couples that have a financial advisor than couples that don't. And I don't think it's necessarily the financial advisor, sort of being a good marriage counselor or anything, but I think it's when you're on the same page with your finances, and because it does ripple out to all different areas of your life, so you have to think about it, then it's that planning and that foresight and the reflection and then the moving on again, as you described.
I think it's having that shared vision and goal and being accountable and keeping on track. I think that's kind of where things derailed for me personally, was that we just lost sight of the end goal and got too busy with work and building, and suddenly finding, he didn't really want to build to that extreme, and I really did, and suddenly there was this imbalance of who was doing what and what was getting done and who wanted what, and our goals just kind of fizzled because we didn't keep talking about it. We should have had a financial advisor.
Now, with this knowledge of sort of how things have unfolded for you, and you see a lot of couples and women coming into your financial planning practice. What advice do you tend to give people as a result? As in sort of general overall advice rather than the specifics, because that's very personal and very situational.
Oh, well, everybody's so different. So it's really just a case of getting to know each person individually. But what I find, the core underlying thing is, can I survive right now? Costs of living have completely blown out. So everyone is in survival mode. And that's really tough at the moment, whether you're a single mum, single dad, or in a couple, everyone is struggling. They are definitely feeling it. And I think over the next year or so, it's going to get tougher. But the underlying thing is that cash flow management budget is something people really struggle with. There are tools now that just make that much easier, keeping on top of their assets, knowing the value of things that are increasing. There's that light at the end of the tunnel for a lot of people. But overall, it's really not to fear financial management. Things do take time, obviously. But for a lot of people, it's just knowing that they have a plan and knowing what that next step is, because I think we're all really stuck on this treadmill. And for many, it's just knowing what's next and how to get to that next stage and how to take that leap of faith. And sometimes they just need that person holding their hand and guiding them onto the next part.
Perfect. There was something that you said that I'd love you to elaborate on a little bit. You said in terms of the cost of living, people are definitely doing it tough, but you think that next year will be tougher. I'm curious as to why you think that. What can you see in your crystal ball that's coming up?
Oh, it's probably just more the updates that we're getting from economists and things like that. Yeah, I just think the rising of property is becoming quite interesting. I think people are needing to change and navigate the way, rates are increasing. So mortgages are going to tighten. Banks are tightening up incredibly with providing any kind of lending. So that always makes things, those are our key indicators that the times are changing. As mortgages become more expensive, so everything else gets pulled back. So we saw this prior around that GFC time. You know, these are sort of the key market indicators that you can see where things are starting to really turn a bit. But I think people are looking at kind of the community style housing, co-living housing, where you know, people have to live together. As it gets more and more expensive on the Gold Coast, single mums are having to live with, you know, take in renters or take in family friends who can you know, assist a little bit with rent, or if you've got a heavy mortgage, taking on a couple boarders. Those are becoming really, really real, and people have to do what they've got to do to make it happen. I think elderly parents are moving in with a lot of people as well. The tiny homes, there's lots of those going in backyards. A lot of people are trying to do renovation, but make homes into dual occupancy, so, or add a granny flat, or, you know, it's all about just trying to increase cash flow and income. So it really lends well in what you're doing with the co-living, because I just think there's such a huge need, and amongst a lot of older women who are facing homelessness, those types of properties are absolutely essential for our future, because there's just no way that people can get into the property market as easily. We've got some strategies actually that if parents can pass some money on to their children and loan them some funds, there's quite a clever way. We're doing a couple of seminars that are coming up. There's quite a clever way of like being able to swap the income they're making on a certain portion for Centrelink income or for age pension, and release some of that money to the children, so they've got a bigger deposit to be able to get into property earlier. And sometimes they're doing that so that they can move in with the children as well, and the grandkids. So yeah, lots of different ways.
Yes, I was, what you were saying about this is kind of forcing us to come together and share more. I actually think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing if it's done intentionally, rather than, okay, I need to do it and I don't really want to do it, and, you know, I'm going to hate every moment of it. But if we can focus on the sharing intentionally, I think we're actually going to end up with stronger communities as a result.
I hope so. I do believe that we are coming back around to community living. I remember when we had our acreage, you know, we had a couple of people around to say, you know, do we want to set up a garden here, like a community garden, and everyone come and take care of their little piece? And, you know, if anyone needs a home, or Wednesday nights, we can do like a big cook up and have people come over if they don't have that extra meal in the week, if they needed it. So I think there's going to be a lot more of that happening. There's just, unfortunately, there's just not enough land, right? We're all grappling for land to be able to do more community type projects, or to put tiny homes on to help those people who are struggling.
It's yes.
You know what it's like trying to get land.
Yes, that is a challenge. Getting land, there's plenty of land, but getting the land at the right price, that's a challenge.
Yeah, and land that's registered and not, and being held and banked, and yeah, for such a huge country with so much resource and so much land, it can be quite frustrating. Yeah.
Interesting. Well, Louise, thank you so much for joining us today. I did just want to do a little bit of a shout out for your book, Worthy Women, and acknowledge that you've now turned this into an online course. Did you just want to talk about that for a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So a few times a year, I sort of run a container of 12 weeks. So it's a 12-week online financial education course. It really just covers the basics. It just helps everyone to put what's going on in their life, the whirling of the financial situation, just onto paper and into a documentation, to create their own kind of financial plan and to keep goals. And, you know, and then we'll have check-in and accountability. We've also got a bonus that's with the wealth portal. And so they'll get access to a wealth portal that basically will help them run it all data feeds from super and from their properties, as well as from their cash flow and their bank accounts. And we can manage it all so that, so that everyone can just keep on top of everything a lot easier as well. And they can get their accountant to link in with it as well. So yeah, it's been a lot more fun and interactive than the book. And I just feel like instead of doing big workshops and trying to get people to workshops, the online 12-week course and doing that one night a week for those 12 weeks is really great because you get to know people really well, and the sharing and the camaraderie between people, and the vulnerability that comes out in the course is it's really amazing. I love that part of it.
I will pop a link to your course in the show notes, so anybody that wants to access that, they can get in touch with you. And yeah.
Yep, we've got another one starting. I think it's going to be the beginning of May, so a couple of months to get people back into the next container. So yeah, thank you so much, Dion. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. It's been lovely to have you.
You're welcome. Thank you.